Alright guys, welcome back. Everything has been primed in black and now we're ready to do some painting. So for all like the internal parts and the joints and all that kind of stuff, frame type parts, I want it to actually look like it's like a big metal frame with big heavy armor on it. So I'm going to be using something dark and metallic here, number 28 steel, for all of the inner frame parts. And then for all the armor parts, I'm going to be using these two Gaia Notes colors here, blue gray and medium blue, to make a two-tone effect. And it's basically going to be like large, like angular block camo on it. So basically I'll paint the medium blue, which is the lighter color of the two. The medium blue I'll paint first over everything, and then we'll do some masking on that on some of the armor, and then we'll go over that with the little bit darker blue on there as well. And then for the fuel tanks, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm thinking to use this RLM gray here. This is RLM 02 gray number 60 in the Mr. Color line for the fuel tanks. Although I'm thinking possibly either to go lighter or darker with this. I'm not entirely sure yet, so I'm going to see how all the armor and the frames, everything, all that's coming, and then I'll make a final determination on the color of the fuel tanks. But let's just go ahead and get to work spraying all of the joint parts and everything first. Alright guys, so here is the base blue, and I think I mentioned before that I was going to do the lighter blue down first and then mask and do the darker blue, but I ended up doing it opposite because I wanted to make sure that the main color is pretty dark, so I wanted it to be ultimately pretty dark colored mobile suits. So I did the dark color first, now we'll do some masking, and then we'll paint on some of the lighter color on there as well too. So for reference, this is the style of camo that I'm going for here. I pulled out one of my Machine & Krieger books. Here it is painted on a Falk, and then here's an example on a Croat, and another example here as well too. So I mean, you guys can see this is a color scheme or a camo pattern that's used relatively commonly, and you see it every now and then in some different Machine & Krieger stuff. So it's basically just big angular shapes on that I need to mask on these armor pieces. Alright gang, so here it is. I wasn't too sure how the camo was going to come out, but I think I'm happy with it. So here's, for example, the main skirt piece there, of course. Also painted this white section on there for like a marking on it, and on the kind of shield part there too, painted that. And it's also got some gloss coat on it now, so now we can move on with some panel lining and decals on it. And so here's just a look at some of the parts, looking pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with this. I think it's going to actually turn out pretty good. Sometimes you're not quite too sure how some things are going to turn out, but I think this one's going to be alright. So for the panel lining and all that, for now, just going to be using some Mr. Weathering color Ground Brown, which is just a really dark brown color here for all the blue armor. And then on the black joint parts, I will do a little bit of panel lining on those with some black. I guess they're not black, they're dark gray, but we'll do some panel lining on them in black. Alright guys, decal time then before we get into the final stages of doing a little bit of weathering on this guy. For the main markings, going to use some Machine & Krieger decals here, and for all the caution markings and everything, I'm going to use some mecha decals here from Child of Mecha. Now obviously I'm using white, so you guys can't really see much of anything there. If you have them in multiple colors, what I found to be helpful on white decals is to have the non-white decal sheet like here, and so I can easily find the decal that I want to use and then go to the white one and cut that out, rather than like trying to stare at the white decals and like hurting your eyes trying to see them clearly, because it's just kind of hard to see white decals sometimes. So I found that to be helpful, but of course you have to have the same decal sheet in more than one color. Alright guys, we're in the home stretch now. All the little details are done, decals I should say, and then now we're just ready for a little bit of filter on this, and that's going to be the last step before our final top coat, of course. So for the filtering for this, I'm going to use a mix of red brown to make it, so just add a little tiny bit of warmth to it, and then just some neutral gray to just kind of yeah, neutralize everything a little bit. So really little bit of filtering I want to do on this. I want to emphasize that because the texture is on there and because the texture is not as strong, it's not as noticeable as I was hoping. I mean, you can see there's some texture on it, but honestly it kind of looks a little bit like my painting just came out not good. It kind of looks like I just didn't paint it very well, that there's some texture on there. That's okay, but because there is that little bit of texture on there, that is going to catch the pigment quite a lot, so I don't need a lot of this enamel paint on there to get, you know, good coverage of that. Even just trying to just removing just the panel line wash that I put on this already earlier, you can see a little bit around some of those areas where it's stained, that the panel line wash stuck in those little textured areas. So and I'm just using a brush dipped in some lighter fluid to then kind of just spread this around. So it may not really seem like it's doing much, but here is now that filtered piece versus the unfiltered piece, and you can just really see the difference in the color there, that just get up a little drops of the enamel paint just spread over that will make a big difference there in the colors, as you can see.